So, Mike, we don't talk about our personal lives on the show for good reason. I don't think people don't even know we're real people. We might just be AI voices. And in this day and age, that very well could be the case. Who knows anymore? Hey, let's take some calls from the audience. I'd like to hear some audience listener notes, also fake and created by AI. We don't talk about our personal lives very often on this show or any of the shows that we work on, because that's not why you're here. That's not the kind of shows that we do. But I will say that this month and January of this year were two of the months this year that I had not programmed on my own. Initially, I turned those opportunities to programmed over to other people, as I tend to do sometimes with you. Mike White, May or March, depending on the year. Father Malone programmed last month, September. So I gave those 2 months this year over to people that I don't work with, but people in my life, as it were. And then those relationships changed since those movies had been programmed. January, I was able to pivot a little bit harder. If you're wondering why we covered Les Mis, or why we didn't cover Les Mis, it's because of that. That's why we covered Cats instead and took that bullet for everybody. And then this month, unfortunately, I decided it's probably best to not change things, because this month's theme still keeps in tone with what this month is all about, which is spooky stuff, though I guess the stuff we're talking about this month is a little less high intensity than normal. I think it's even less high intensity than the stuff you're talking about this month on your show, Mike. This October is pretty, Practical Magic, not exactly a movie where people are like, this is an intense film. Or, it's a pretty cozy movie in a lot of ways, I think is probably one of the words I would use to describe it. But this October, I did not program, so I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. I'm merely just saying that I'm having to temper my expectations with some of these movies and definitely be a little bit more reserved than I normally would be, because if I were to be honest about my feelings on Practical Magic, this movie I have no interest in ever watching again for a whole host of reasons, and I can't do anything about that, so I rewatched it for this episode. But just letting everyone else out there know that we're not going to be doing a Practical Magic follow-up episode anytime soon. So, just, I guess, what is this, like some sort of 2.5 minute disclaimer? Yeah. So on this episode of the Culture Cast, I am still your host, Chris Dashu, much to the chagrin of at least 2 people out there in the world. And I'm joined by my good friend all the way from the projection booth. It is the internet's best movie podcast, as far as I'm concerned. And as far as you're concerned, your friend and mine, Mike White.
Something Midnight Margaritas.
Something Stockard Channing. Something Sandy B. Yes, that's right. On this episode of the Culture Cast, we are taking a look at a film. If you've clicked on the link for this episode, you know what it is. But we're kicking off Horror-tober, the 10th year. It's been 10 years since I started this show. Jesus H. Christ, what in the actual fuck am I doing with my life? We are kicking off Horror-tober with a look at 1998's Griffin Dunne, of all people, directed Practical Magic.
They're enchanting, breathtaking, bewitching sisters.
Magic isn't just spells and potions.
Now it will take all their power to make love come alive. Sandra Bullock, Nicole Kidman.
Do you ever put your arms out and spin and spin and spin? Well, that's what love is like.
Practical Magic.
So like I mentioned, the film is directed by Griffin Dunne, based on the book by Alice Hoffman of the same name. Film stars the aforementioned Sandy B, Nicole Kidman, Stockard Channing, Diane West, who we were just talking about recently. Evan Rachel Wood, Aidan Quinn, Goran Viznik, though I'm sure I destroyed that gentleman's name, Margot Martindale. There's a lot of people. A very young Evan Rachel Wood, I might even add. And the film is about 2 witch sisters, one who moves away to LA, the other one who stays home, and a curse is put upon the one who stays home. She gets married and her husband dies, and she must move on with her life. And there's a lot going on. Actually, there's so much going on in this movie, and there's like a whole 15-minute prologue exposition dump is what it feels like, even to just get the ball rolling. There's a lot going on. We are going to spoil the movie if you've never seen it. It's been out since 1998, so go check it out. Come back. We'll still be here. Mike, I'm going to kick it to you first. I know you did a lot of preparation for this episode, reading the book, reading the script, doing all the legwork, as did I. So tell me, what do you think of Practical Magic? When did you see it for the first time? If this was the first time, great. If not, when was it? And what do you think now rewatching it for the Culture Cast?
So the first time I watched this was actually just a few months ago. It was on an international flight that didn't have that many movies. I don't think I would have picked this had there been a larger selection, but I had always been kind of curious about this movie, so finally had an opportunity to watch it. And as I watched the movie, I just kept thinking to myself, something is missing from this movie. It just feels really incredibly choppy to me. And there are moments where I'm like, well, wait, how did that happen? And wait, how did that happen? And I thought that maybe it was a victim of studio interference, or maybe it was a really dark movie at one point. I think there were some darker moments, like there's a resurrection scene that I think went on for longer. But it really wasn't that. It was, I think, a poor adaptation. And it's very odd because I did track down an early script that was out there. I don't remember what the date was on it, if it had a date, but it was just credited to Robin Swycord, who is a very, pretty darn competent writer. But then it looks like she got rewritten by Adam Brooks and Akiva Goldsman. And Akiva Goldsman, I really just don't know how he manages to have a career other than he's been working and fucking stuff up for so long that they might as well just let him continue. He does things that some people love. Beautiful Mind, Cinderella Man, Batman and Robin, and then he does some bad movies too. But it's just, how is this guy still working? And I'm thinking, having read that earlier draft, which was 124 pages, a little long for this. The prologue, like you mentioned, it goes on for quite a while, but you get a lot more, and you get a lot closer to Hoffman's book, which was a pretty big hit when it came out. And she's done so many like sequels and prequels now to it, made a whole cottage industry out of Practical Magic, that I think they kind of sabotaged that earlier draft, cut it down quite a bit, and just didn't know how to handle this adaptation. They just kind of took an X to it that way. At least that's my impression. So yeah, this was very much a curiosity thing for me. So when you announced that you had this on your schedule, I leapt at it because I said, I want to find out more, because I had only just seen the movie. I hadn't done this dive into it. I hadn't listened to the book. I hadn't read the script. I hadn't heard the commentary, paid my $4.44 to buy this on Prime DVD over at Barnes & Noble. So I invested a lot of time and money into this statue.
Oof. Oh, sent a chill up my spine, White. Yeah, before we even talk about Practical Magic, and I think that this is the thing that it is now, having done this for so long and having looked back on the things that I saw before I ever did this, and again, having spent 10 years now doing this, but having spent a lifetime watching movies, there are certain movies that just stick out to me in my lifetime as like things that if I like mention it to the people I went and saw it with, we'll all be like, oh, that fucking thing, that fucking evening. One of those films is a film that Akiva Goldsman wrote in 2007. I went and saw it with my friends in theaters. I Am Legend.
Oh boy.
I fucking hate that movie. I remember I went and saw it with my friends in theaters when I was in high school. I remember leaving the theater, being in my car, driving home from the movie theater, and just repeatedly saying, I fucking hated that movie. That movie was awful. It was a waste of fucking time. And it is a waste of time. I would then subsequent go on to read the book that's novella. I guess it's a book, right? It's more of a novella.
It's a book, yeah.
Yeah.
It's 145 pages, something like that.
Yeah. So I would go on to read the Matheson book that it was based on, and I put, if you could see me, dear listener, based on in quotations, because the no adaptation of that story has ever even gotten to the fucking point of the title of the story. I think the last time we talked about I Am Legend, I said it. I will say it again. Nobody has even addressed the name of the goddamn story in the context of the story, the way it's being told, because there's a payoff in the story there. I say all of this because to come back to Akiva Goldsman, who loves to adapt things. Go and look at how much of his career is just adapting other people's stuff. All the Dan Brown books were adapted by Akiva Goldsman. Rings, that sequel to The Ring that came out way after the fact. Another little series that's totally not a little series, but you would have thought it was given how poorly it was adapted in 2017 by Akiva Goldsman. The Dark Tower. Remember that? Remember that fucking mess?
Debacle.
Yes. Yeah. And that has come out since I've been doing this. Since I have been doing this podcast, the only thing that has come out of his that I have covered that has been new was The Dark Tower. And that was one of the worst movies I had ever gone in theaters to see for this show. I believe I say it then on that episode. I'll say it again here. The Dark Tower is a movie that wastes everybody's time. And the leads in that movie are Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey. Holy shit. Like, that movie failed in spite of literally everything, is what it feels like. And definitely not the casting is why it failed. All that to say, Practical Magic shares a lot in common with everything I've just mentioned. Good actors, competent actors, great actors, even Academy Award-winning actors in some of their cases, Sandra Bullock being one of them. And yet here we are, a movie that wastes all of their talents because the script has no idea how to introduce characters, how to get the story moving in a competent way. And the movie seems to think that exposition in the first 15 minutes is enough for us to understand everything else that's going on in the movie. You could have just sprinkled it in throughout the film. And frankly, ultimately, this story should have been adapted into a TV show or a miniseries or a series on HBO. Look, they're talking about a Practical Magic sequel right now. Sandra Bullock as recently as like a month ago, or Nicole Kidman, right, was essentially asked about it. And they're like, we'll do it. Because of course you will. At this point, it's kind of a cultural touchstone for a whole lot of people. And I'm not going to say women, because I think that's unfair. I think plenty of men like this movie, just like I think plenty of men like Hocus Pocus. The problem is, similarly to our dear friend Father Malone, who we recorded an episode before this one with, I have a very complicated history with this movie, because a lot of my feelings towards this movie are tied up in the people who I saw it with initially, and the people who liked this movie and who picked this movie. All that being said, I actually kind of like this movie. I think Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman's chemistry is great. I think
amazing.
Their chemistry is the best part of the goddamn movie. And then Stockard Channing and Wiest, the four of them together is great. Like, they're great. The four of them together is the best part of the movie. Then you have Evan Rachel Wood in there as well, Camilla Bell in there as well. Like, you know, and those are competent child actors as well. I mean, all great character actors, all great child actors. You have young Sandra Bullock, then you have her kid. I mean, there's a lot going on, and I think it's all well cast. I just think the script fails this movie so hard, and I'm just gonna blame Akiva Goldsman outright because Akiva Goldsman is the one who his name's on this, and I know his track record has bared out.
Oh yeah,
Robin Swikord's does not. Alice Hoffman's does not. They're both well-regarded, more than competent writers. Akiva Goldsman, like you said, I genuinely don't know how this guy still is able to sniff at such high-profile projects, really. Like, he's a writer on Star Trek. Really?
Yeah.
Cool. I wish I could write on Star Trek. And my track record is 0. And I would think a track record of 0 is better than a guy who's out there going and making bombs out of some of the biggest, like, pop culture things possible, like The Dark Tower. Jesus. People were waiting for years for that movie to come out. And then that's what we got? Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I remember when that movie came out, I just heard a big old wet fart and a lot of disappointed Stephen King fans. I've never read the Gunslinger series, so one of these days I will, and then I'll watch the movie and I'll be mad. So you can count on me in the future. Future Mike will be very angry about The Dark Tower.
I've read the first book. I was disappointed by the movie, but the movie's bad in its own right. It really has very little to do with it being a bad adaptation. Like, it's just kind of a bad movie. And similarly to this, like, this is not a great movie, even if it's not a great adaptation. Like, it's a muddled movie that really struggles to tell a coherent story.
Yeah, well, it is interesting because it keeps a lot of the pillars of the book. It moves them around in a lot of interesting ways. Like, so in the intro, you said that she lives in LA, and I didn't get LA. I am not sure where she lives at, where Nicole Kidman's Gillian Owens character lives at. She's definitely far away from Sandra Bullock's Sally Owens character, but I don't know exactly where they're at. I kept thinking New England.
Yeah, somewhere in the Northeast, right?
Yeah, though the whole movie was shot in the Northwest. That was all shot outside of Seattle or in Washington on like this island there. So I'm like, okay, so it's an island. And she even says like, oh, come out to the island. So when she said the island, I was like, are we at Long Island? Where are we at with this stuff? And like, how long does it take? Like, where is Gillian? Like, there's that whole driving all night scene, which is pretty darn cool. I like the special effects for that scene where you get to see Nicole Kidman just in one time and then the rest of the world is in another time. And we see the sun rise from it being a nighttime scene. I thought that looked really cool. I thought a lot of the special effects worked a lot, but yeah, like the stuff with Jimmy just it comes at a weird place. Like this whole thing of we have to murder him, and they murder him twice, whereas the guy just died in the book. I mean, he did die because of Belladonna, or at least they thought that he died of Belladonna. Later on, you find out from Detective Gary that he didn't die of Belladonna, and they don't even know why he died. The whole thing with the ants, too, the ants are such wonderful characters. I love Diane Wiest. I love Stockard Channing. It's interesting because the movie is smart enough to know we need to keep these characters around a little bit longer than they are in the book, because they are basically the bookends in the book, right?
It's wild to me the way they're treated in the book comparatively to the movie.
Oh, yeah. And like, oh, well, we got to go to the aunt's house and this stuff. And like when they go to the aunt's house, we don't really get what they do at the aunt's house. But yeah, it's, yeah. And just the appearance of Detective Gary is at a weird spot in this one as well. It comes in like around like 45 minutes or so, which is, this movie's an hour and 44 minutes. So it just feels pretty early, feels a lot earlier than it should. Though in the book, he comes in, like the book is about 8 hours to listen to. He comes in, I want to say, 2 hours to go. He just kind of shows up, but there's a lot of other things that are going on. I understand we're going to collapse those for the movie and just try to keep the most important parts. I don't know if they do. And like they really build up the Jimmy thing to be a lot more. And this whole thing of the community and getting all of these other women on the school call round robin thing, that's nowhere to be found. Like they couldn't give a shit about any of their neighbors, really. Like,
right.
Sally does a good job of blending in. She doesn't have a potion shop with these two other women and stuff. She's just a normal everyday person. And really, that's kind of the interesting thing to me, is in the book she just rejects magic almost completely. And so to have her stirring her coffee cup with magic in this movie, I was like, no, that's not Sally. Like one of these two characters has to reject magic and then find that it's going to help her in the end. And neither of them do.
So that's the other thing that's interesting. And so later this month, I'm going to be talking about Halloween Town, which the mom in Halloween Town is that character, the way that Sally is in the book, where it's like, yeah, you are the one who is apprehensive of this because you understand what that means. I mean, that's, ultimately that's the thing here, right? And that's the thing we haven't talked about is the Mark Fierstein character, who's the initial Sandra Bullock husband, and we haven't mentioned the beetle, the death beetle, because there's a death beetle in this movie that makes noise, and it's a curse. So their mom heard the death beetle, and then their dad died.
Yeah.
And then she hears so the death beetle means that when you hear it, your significant other is going to die, or you're going to befall tragedy. And so there's a scene early on where she's trying to find the beetle in her house, and then her husband, like fake out, gets almost hit by bicyclers and then gets hit by a car. And that's what initially sets the movie into motion. But it almost feels like that's a different movie. Like that could have been its own movie. Like that should have been its own movie. Or at least the first third of this movie. Give this movie another 20 minutes and make a 2-hour movie out of it. But don't put it all in like the prologue of the movie. It is very lazy. It's very and it robs us of like essentially caring about Mark Fierstein's character at all. He does he even get any lines?
He gets some, but very few. And this whole thing of, when he dies, Jillian goes into a depression that lasts a year. And like in this one, it's a scene?
Yeah, she's very sad for not very long.
No,
and also to mind you, the aunts are the ones who make the romance happen on top of everything else.
Which I don't remember that being in the book.
No, I don't either. Which
I really don't think that was the case.
And that doesn't really work here, because if that's the case, then how can there be there's a curse built into them using magic initially? Like it almost seemed like it was more about well, he's gonna die, or you're gonna find somebody. It's like, well, she finds somebody because of them, and then he dies anyways. Like, wait a second here, like none of the magic matters is kind of what it feels like.
Right.
And again, Sally believing in the magic and using the magic doesn't make any sense, because again, the way the story is played, she would reject the magic because the magic is the reason he's going to die. Curses are magic, right? Like,
yeah. Well, and yeah, she does that whole, like, it really, the whole thing of her casting the spell and saying, I'm only going to fall in love with a man who can flip a pancake in midair and has one blue eye and one brown eye and yada, yada, yada. The Adrian, why am I forgetting his
Aidan
last
Quinn.
name? Aidan Quinn character, that is not there in the book, and we don't really need that. Like, and also, sorry to just keep comparing against the book, but in that early draft of the script, the Ben character is there. So they keep this guy because really, this movie's kind of really screws over Nicole Kidman's character, because she's just a loser who goes out, fucks a bunch of guys, ends up with Goran, Johnny, Angel Love, and it's like she never gets a boyfriend. She never finds her romance, never finds her true love. Meanwhile, Sandra Bullock gets 2 true loves. So it's like, all right, like bring in that Ben character who was so important to the book. And I loved him. And I love that he was a magician. So you've got him doing all the parlor tricks. And then you've got the real magic. I thought that was a really nice contrast to have that character in there, and that he's kind of on the outs with the ants. They're not sure what to think about this guy, but eventually proves himself. And he's just such a lovable character. And you robbed us of this guy. Completely.
And he's not in the movie at all. And it makes no sense. And why is Nicole Kidman's character sidelined like that? It's almost like it's a Sandra Bullock romance film with Nicole Kidman as like as like her wingman, or her plucky sidekick. Plucky? I mean, it's plucky. It's just, there's no, I don't know, like, as good as their chemistry is, it is definitely Sandra Bullock's movie. And the book is not that way. It's their book. It's the sisters' book. And I think that's, like, for me, the biggest failing of the movie is just not understanding the source material at its base core level. Because like you mentioned, Alice Hoffman's written how many books now? Practical Magic. Like, this is kind of all she does. And okay, I don't blame her. Like, when you're having your stuff adapted into movies and then people are begging for a sequel to the movie years later, to the point where we're still talking about a potential sequel happening in 2024, 26 years since this movie came out. Yeah, there must have been something, and Alice Hoffman gets it, but I feel like the failure of this movie does come from it being just a very poor adaptation that, again, Akiva Goldsman, his name's on it. It's not Nicole Kidman. It's not Sandra Bullock. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the book is really a story of 3 sets of sisters, I should say, between the aunts who are sisters, Jillian and Sally, and then Jillian's daughters. So you get, like, and Jillian's daughters kind of, again, barely in this, and because you see Jillian and Sally as young girls, and then you see Sally's daughters later on as almost the same age, I'm just like, are these the same girls? What is, it's like, it was very confusing for me while I was watching this the first time. I was just like, did they use the same actresses? Because they probably could have. I mean, really, they're just kind of placing these girls at almost the exact same age. So it feels like almost this movie, it's like poetry or rhymes. It's very circular in the way that we go through these generations. But like, we don't get that third generation, really. Those 2 girls are just meh. They're just around. It really doesn't matter. And the whole thing too of, like, the woman coming in and getting the love spell and all that, and killing the dove with the pins through the dove and all that. I'm just like, yeah, you got to show the consequence, because they say, like, be careful what you wish for, dear. And the way that, so in the book, that woman is there. She works at a drugstore. She wants this guy who's married to another woman. She casts this love spell with the help of the aunts. The guy becomes so enamored. It's one of those, genie curses where the guy becomes so enamored that she can't do anything. She's just completely like, this guy will keep his hands off of me. I can't go to work. Like, it's just, he is so infatuated with her that it's just a total pain in the ass. And then you get this movie where Jimmy shows up and he can't keep his hands off of Sally. I mean, I couldn't either. It's Nicole Kidman, 1998. Even Nicole Kidman, 2024, Nicole Kidman, 2054, I'm going to be all about, but it's just like, he can't keep his hands off of her. And I was like, oh, did he get this love spell? Is there a love spell on him? Because he's just overly romantic. You don't really get this idea that he's such a prick right off the bat, and we really needed that. And like, I just was like, oh, did they cast a spell on him? Because it was like too much. The performance was too much.
Yeah, I wish they had addressed that, but it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, but yeah, show me too that there are consequences to these things, because really, I think that the husband, who, yeah, like you said, barely gets any lines. I think we're mostly in voiceover from letters from Sally to Jillian, other than a few lines here and there. Yeah, he's dead. And I'm just like, okay, I think he always would have been fated to die pretty young, regardless of the spell.
Well, and that's the other thing, is we never get the sense, like, I guess the curse or the spell just kind of works on its own time, because the kids are like 10 years old. Like, right. They're like kids. She's like, I have a perfect life. And it's like, wait a second here. Like, wait, what, when does the curse when does this take place? Like, when does anything happen here? Right. It's just very convenient per the kind of construct of the story. And that's, I think, the other issue is, like, things just happen in this movie with not a lot of explanation. I mean, again, we don't really understand the rules of the magic, like you just alluded to. There's not any real repercussions for abusing the magic. The sisters bring Goran back to life, and then they kill him again. And so what?
Not there in the book either. Not to be that guy, but that scene.
Why add it to a movie if it doesn't add anything to the narrative? Exactly. You can continue to be that guy all you like. At the end of the day, the source material was a better version of the story.
Well, even Griffin Dunn in the commentary, and the commentary is kind of interesting because it's Alan Silvestri, the composer, it's Griffin Dunn, and then it's Denise Denovi and Sandra Bullock. It's really oddly mixed, though, because whenever Denovi and Bullock are on screen, I can barely hear them over the sound of the movie. Hopefully, if they release this on Blu-ray one of these days, they'll fix that. But Dunn is like, well, maybe I should have just gone from them killing him in the car to burying him in the garden and not had the whole resurrection thing. And I'm like, yeah. Yes, that would have been better. That would have moved it along a little bit more. Give me more time for other things that are more important. And I guess is it supposed to be a sexual thing, or just that they don't have whatever they need, so they use whipped cream on him? I'm like, that seems really in bad taste.
Was it supposed to be a sex thing?
I don't know. I'm guessing not, but the way that she puts her finger in the whipped cream and licks it off, I'm like,
ew,
off of this dead guy? Yeah, that's pretty gross, Sandy. What are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the one weirdest scene in the whole movie. I'm like, yeah. I do like a good chain smoking Nicole Kidman, though.
Oh yeah, smoking kills.
Smoking kills, according to Slotlights.net. Right. Smoking kills. Jesus Christ. That's a deep reference for any of you real pieces of shit out there like us.
Well, I think anybody who watches Indian films has seen that quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, but we're not talking about Indian.
No, we're not. We're talking about Nicole Kidman, 1998 Nicole Kidman, who apparently is fresh off a flight from Eyes Wide Shut. For whatever reason, I always put this movie in like 1992 territory, so that it's a 1998 movie always throws me.
And does it throw you even more that apparently Nicole Kidman couldn't handle that they were only doing like 3 or 4 takes because she had worked with Kubrick, who was 70 take man?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Good old Griffin Dunn just wants to do 1 or 2 takes. We need to do 20 more. We're good.
Yeah. She probably had PTSD.
Yeah. He just kept having
she had been
takes over and over again
for years at that point, I think.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. What a different movie from Eyes Wide Shut.
I know, right? God. And like you've already alluded to, like Nicole Kidman's so good in everything, right? Like, and I'm not saying I'm a huge Nicole Kidman fan, but I haven't seen her in enough stuff to really have an opinion. She's good in this. I mean, she's playing that like character perfectly. That character that she needs to play is perfectly written. Now, here's the thing. Is that the character the way I read her on the page? Not really. I didn't see her as Nicole Kidman, really. Sandra Bullock, I could see as Sally, but Nicole Kidman, I really couldn't see as the sister.
Well, I don't know, because I read or listened to the book after I saw the movie, so I kind of was putting her in there. But just the way that Hoffman is describing pretty much all the women, other than maybe the aunts, as being just drop dead gorgeous, especially like to think that Sally's gawky daughter who blossoms into this absolute gorgeous beauty, I kept thinking like, oh, well, if her aunt is Nicole Kidman, she's going to look a lot like Nicole Kidman.
Evan Rachel Wood, apparently.
Yeah. Who I still don't know all the details of the stuff that went down when she was a kid, but I think she went through a lot of hell, a lot of abuse.
Marilyn Manson.
Was it just Marilyn? Or
I mean,
like a lot.
I don't know beyond that. That was the only thing I had ever heard. I like Evan Rachel Wood a lot. I mean, I know that you and I have our disagreements on Westworld, but
I thought she was great in Westworld.
Yeah, she's like, I mean, of a show that has amazing actors, she's up there, and she's sharing the screen with Anthony Hopkins and Jeffrey Wright in that show. So yeah, she's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They don't give her enough to do. I don't think they don't give any of the child actors enough to do. And the child actors here are like good child actors. Like I would almost even say like some of them are still working. So they've gone from being child actors to actors even. So
yeah, I mean, it's great too, because, Diane Wiest is still working. I haven't seen Stockard Channing in a little bit, but I know Wiest was just in that prequel to Rosemary's Baby.
Apartment 7A?
Wow, that you could remember that is pretty great.
Yeah. Sure. Well, I've seen plenty of ads for it because it looks just like Rosemary's Baby, but
yeah,
like a prequel. Well, if we're just going to do it again, we'll just do it before and pretend that it happened once before and just don't interact with it. Who cares?
And we'll know that the dancer kills herself because that's what we heard in Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah. Well, you ruined the movie for me already, Mike.
I'm sorry.
How dare you?
Spoilers.
Let me ask you something. What are your because I don't think we've ever covered one of her movies at least together, and I don't even know on this show if we've covered it. Sandra Bullock, thoughts?
Yeah, I think she is a very solid actress, and I think that she's great because she can do drama very well. She can get that quiver in her voice very, very well. And then she's just so freaking funny, too. I mean, some of the thrillers that she was in the early part of her career, like The Net, that's pretty laughable.
Pelican Brief?
Yeah.
I love that book.
Yeah.
I love the book, but the movie leaves a lot to be desired.
I mean, I even like some of the shitty things she was in, like Murder by Numbers.
Oh, my God. Is that the one with the gauze? Is that the Gosling movie?
I think it is, yeah. I really like those Miss Congeniality movies. I really like The Proposal. I kind of actually liked Bird Box, though I haven't ever watched it a second time. What's the one with her and Melissa McCarthy?
The Heat.
The Heat. I thought that she was really freaking funny in there. And then I've even seen like some of those cheesy ones like The Blind Side. I thought she handled the entire movie of Gravity incredibly well. Yeah, I think she's very solid. And I like this whole kind of weird relationship she's got now with Brad Pitt, where she's like showing up in like cameo roles and like Bullet Train and stuff. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I don't know if it's like an Ocean's crossover or something, but yeah, I'm there for it. How about you? What are your thoughts on her?
I think she's fine. I like her in most things I've seen her in. Miss Congeniality is pretty great. Yeah, her early 90s stuff, I think to your point, pretty bizarre, all over the place. Inconsistent is a nice way of putting it. I saw The Lost City, which was kind of fun. I think that's her and Channing. Is that her and Channing Tatum?
That's a lot of fun, yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. I mean, she can be funny. I mean, look, there's a reason they cast her as the George Clooney opposite in that Ocean's 8 movie that I believe is getting a sequel.
Is it going to be 9?
I don't know.
They've got like 2 numbers until they run into the other series.
Yeah, well, and I'm waiting for Danny Ocean to be alive because that's also what was hinted at in that movie. So, and look, I think that she's remarkably charismatic as an actress, and I like her a lot. All About Steve, though, is pretty rough as a watch.
Yeah, there's definitely rough ones in there.
Even as recently as 2009, like that movie is, that movie's a fucking rough watch. She essentially plays like a mentally disabled person, which is in bad taste now, if it was ever in good taste then.
Right.
And Bradley Cooper is like being stalked by her. It's fucking horrifying. But other than things like that, I think Sandra Bullock's fine. It's just don't watch that movie expecting anything other than like an hour and a half of just cringing.
What's that one called again?
All About Steve. Yeah.
Okay.
Bradley Cooper plays like a weatherman, I think, and she's like stalking him.
With a title like that, I would have thought it was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, totally. It's like Bradley Cooper, Ken Jeong, Thomas Hayden Church, like from one of the producers of Miss Congeniality, I'm pretty sure is like the tagline of the movie even. So
you didn't tell me DJ Qualls was in this.
The new guy? The new guy?
Yes. Oh, God. I've seen that movie so many times.
I love The New Guy. That's a good one.
So do I.
That's a good movie. Yeah, Sandra Bullock's fine. I think Sandra Bullock is one of those actresses who, as we've already like clearly talked about, like she can move within several kinds of genres. She can be serious. I mean, she's an Academy Award winning actress, and then she can be funny, and then she can kind of do other things, utilitarian things like, horror movies. I think it's Bird Box. I have yet to see Bird Box. I didn't get swept up in the hype of Bird Box, but Ocean's movies are kind of thriller actiony movies, and she was fun in that. So yeah, I think she's great. I don't think that this movie gives anyone enough to do, but I think if it gives I think it gives everyone but one person not enough to do. I think it gives Sandra Bullock the bulk majority of the movie, frankly, which I think is fine. I think to your point, though, already, and I would further hammer it home, the version of the character as she appears on screen is not like the version of the character in the book. And the version of the character in the book is a lot more interesting and nuanced than the version that we see in the movie. And that's because the version that we see in the movie just doesn't have that internal conflict that the one in the book does. And she needed something, because she's not even, like you said, she's not even sad enough about her husband for very long. And she's literally talking in the missives to her sister about how perfect her life is. And then all of a sudden her perfect life is ruined and she's just sad for like a day.
Yeah. I mean, I guess she's dropping the girls off with the ants because she's so depressed, but it really doesn't come across very well.
This movie lacks the ability to show us periods of time passing. This movie has a hard time establishing how long things are taking, because there's a point where it seems like Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman are time traveling like across the United States.
It's magic.
But they're driving.
It's magic.
In cars. Magic in cars, yes. You say. It makes no fucking sense.
I completely agree, because I'm like, okay, like even when she shows up at Sally's place and we've seen the driving sequence, I was still like, is she really there, or is Sally dreaming? Because you see the part where she's like holding her hand and touching the scar, and the other one's touching her scar, and they say each other's names. I'm like, okay, well, if they are magic, which they are, why are they, they should just be able to collapse that space. And like they have a conversation under sheets here at one point. I was like, well, this is perfect. And then when she comes up from under the sheet, her sister's gone. Like it was just an astral projection type of thing.
Yeah, like in Star Wars with the Kylo Ren and
exactly.
Rey. Yeah,
exactly. Or, Luke Skywalker being able to take on the entire Imperial army as an astral projection.
Right. Anything like that. From those good Star Wars movies that we love so much.
Yeah. The
best ones.
Yes.
Yeah. The ones that we love. Yeah.
Beloved series.
Yeah. I don't understand why these missed opportunities weren't taken advantage of, because the script doesn't serve the plot of the book even. Like it's not concerned with what the book is concerned with. And I think Alice Hoffman's book, I read it last year towards the end of the year. Like I was like, wow, the movie is kind of a pale comparison even to this.
Oh, yeah.
And the movie has its problems. I mean, the movie's kind of like paced really weird, and it has no ability to kind of set its characters in reality in terms of like ground them somewhere for more than 5 minutes, please, movie. I think you're having a hard time with giving us like a sense of time and space here, but I don't think Griffin Dunn did a poor job directing.
No, I don't think so either.
It's just a shame, because it's not that this is the most high profile thing he's worked on, but this is definitely a thing that, like, I think a lot of people have a lot of fondness for. And I think for a lot of people, this might be like, this probably is the biggest thing he's directed, I guess, in my approximation, unless I don't know something that people really love Addicted to Love.
They may. I don't know if I've ever seen that.
Was that like Matthew Broderick and Meg Ryan?
What I really think they love is movie 43.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. That's what it is. The movie where Hugh Jackman has a ball sack on his chin.
Exactly.
God.
I think I watched one of his called Fierce People at a film festival. If that's the same one. No, I didn't see this one. I saw another one that he directed at a film festival. And yeah, I mean, and he's a very competent director. Lovely guy.
Yeah, one of the best. Fucking After Hours, for fuck's sake. Like, one of my absolute favorite movies. He is the star of that movie, and he's the best part of that movie because he's so good in it. Like,
and hey, if anybody ever gives me their time for an interview like he did, just like, yeah, great, fantastic person, because I appreciate it. Even though he was in a cab and talking to me that way.
Well, better than not at all.
Better than not at all. Exactly. Better than using the bathroom at Starbucks in Manhattan, which one actor from The Thing did to me once. So yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, yeah. But yeah, no, I thought it was very competently directed. I think it looks gorgeous. You know,
very cozy movie.
Oh yeah, I mentioned the Drive All Night sequence. I thought that looked good. I kind of touched on the Gore and Ghost. I think that looked really good as well. It almost reminded me a little bit of The Frighteners, which was interesting. Did that come out? That came out right before, well, a couple of years before this.
Yep.
But they weren't using Weta for this, I don't think.
No, but it has that same feel, right?
Yeah.
It's something about the glow. Really... It's the glow, right?
Yeah. I don't think the ghost stuff was really that necessary, and especially to have it happen twice with the possession. The possession happens twice, right? And then he's kind of not necessarily possessing them, but influencing them when they're having the midnight margaritas, and they start ripping on each other, and then they start to sing the same song that he was singing the night he died. So I was like, okay, you know, I thought that was really nice, that kind of subtle influence, but I don't think we needed the ghost and the whole thing of him coming up and stuff. I liked that the ghost in the book was just out in the garden and by those lilacs, and then they chop down the lilacs, which become roses here, and then eventually grows back as like these incredible thorns that grow like 2 feet every hour or something. I was like, yeah, that's dangerous. That's really cool that it's in your own garden. You have to take care of this stuff.
No, instead we just have to have the most obvious choice.
Yeah. And that way too, Gary gets to see it and experience it and then says that the girls are innocent, as opposed to like doing detective work.
Well, he can't be that smart of a character.
No. And then I still don't know if they actually conjured him up. You know, in the book, no, he wasn't conjured. He wasn't part of a spell. In the movie, I honestly don't know if Diane Wiest and Stockard Channing didn't conjure him. It didn't put some sort of spell on him, because he is everything that she said in that spell earlier in the movie.
Interesting. I had never even thought about it.
I mean, after that happened once, I would probably never trust those aunts again.
Well, okay, so that's the other thing, right? And that's the weird kind of relationship that the movie doesn't, like you just kind of alluded to, the movie doesn't really acknowledge that. Like, they're, again, I kind of tried to allude to it earlier, they're the reason she meets this guy and then he dies, because they know what's going to happen.
The curse.
Yeah. And they let it happen. Like, I mean, again, I understand why she's maybe not that upset, but like, they kind of let all this happen to you. And they kind of, in a lot of ways, like, enabled it to happen, if not, like, again, we don't even know, caused it to happen outright. Because, yeah, the Aidan Quinn character doesn't even seem like a real person in a lot of ways.
No, the way he shows up. And I found it interesting that he actually goes away in the book, that he leaves for a while, and he actually gives the case to somebody else who he knows is not going to be as competent, and then he actually even covers for them. I was like, okay, yeah, that's quite a bit different than this, where he's not going to cover for her, and he's not they're not nearly as love struck, you know, like he is just completely beside himself. And that's also in the book why I'm like, well, was he, you know, like, did they cast a spell on him just because he reads that letter and just immediately falls in love with her? But yeah, I don't know, big time debate with that one. But yeah, it's just I don't see him being nearly the detective that he is even in the book. And I love his backstory too, the whole thing of like his grandfather being hit by lightning and all this stuff, and how he almost gets hit by lightning because there's this big reunion in a storm. None of that is, I mean, this is like crime romance type reading stuff where he's, running through, like she's in the rain and running over to his car at the hotel and like watches him come back from the fried chicken place, and they sit in the car forever. And then, it's just like, yes, this is great. Like the lights, the rain. I mean, the whole end of the book takes place during this massive deluge where they're going to get, flooded out and everything. And that's one of the problems too, is that Jimmy's body is starting to come up from the ground because of all the rain.
Right. But I think it's more important to just forego all of that.
Yeah.
Who cares? Really? By the way, when she receives the letter at the end of the movie, it says that they are on Maria's Island, Maine. So they are Maine. In Maine. I mean, well, where else do you set a story with witches? You're going to set it in the Northeast, right? If not Massachusetts, then Maine, right?
Right.
Or exactly. Maine, or I guess Maine solely. You set all stories about witches in Maine or Massachusetts, right? Like,
yes,
I guess so. Or just maybe just Maine, I guess. I don't know. Like,
yeah.
At the end, when it's so the end. The end of the movie is so cutesy, right? Where they're all standing on top of the house.
yeah, wearing the actual witches' outfits,
and then they all fly away, right?
Outfits, yeah, and they just jump off and then they land.
So everybody now knows they're witches, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, because she comes out. That's an interesting thing how they use the gay terminology for her. Admitting that she's a witch.
Thank you for mentioning that. If you weren't gonna mention it, I was. What a weird co-opting, huh?
Yeah.
And this is the late 90s. Like In-N-Out has come out already, right?
Yeah. I want to say that was like 94, 95, something like that.
Yeah. To call it like coming out about being a witch, I don't think that's what that means. I don't think that's what that means, Sandra Bullock. Like,
yeah.
Again, not in the book, created solely for the movie, right? I don't think they use that. That's the thing. I mean, so much of what Alice Hoffman does in the book is just giving us reasons why the characters are doing what they're doing in the movie, which in the movie we're given no explanation. So it's like, why are they doing this? Oh, well, you have to read the book. Well, I don't need to read the book.
Right.
I shouldn't have to read the book. The movie should stand on its own as its own thing. And that's the thing I feel like ultimately about this movie that I think the movie kind of gets away with is the setting is so good. The film, like the quality of the film, at least like I'm talking about like the fact that it's filmed on film. It has that nice glow to it. It's filmed in the Northeast and it has two really charismatic leads. Like the movie gets away with a lot. It really does. Like for as kind of lackluster as I think most of the movie is in terms of like the plot, the specifics of the plot, it really gets a lot out of its two leads. And I think that's, I think that if you're Griffin Dunn, you're thinking, well, Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman, this is a layup. And in a lot of ways it was. I mean, the movie is getting a sequel at some point. It's still rather well regarded, even if the movie itself doesn't necessarily live up to, I think, the way people remember this movie, even as it were. But, I think you could do worse at Halloween time. It really could. I mean, the movie didn't make a lot of money in theaters. It was a $75 million budget, which where did that money go?
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman may get paid $25 million to be in this movie. Like, holy shit, for real? Like,
building that huge facade maybe, and the sets, the interior sets look fantastic. The exterior with that house and garden looks amazing. Yeah. And I didn't realize there was such a cult around this. Like, as I was doing my research, I just kept coming across these articles like, things that you missed in Practical Magic when you saw it as a kid and I'm like, oh, people watch this as a kid. Okay. And then as that goes on, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see now. I could see people getting into this movie. I could see people really liking it. I could see people, Midnight Margaritas. It's like, okay, yeah, we get it, But yeah, I didn't realize that there was that cult around it. And for whatever reason, you mentioned Hocus Pocus earlier, seeing those little girls at the end in their witches' hats in this so remind me of, who is it, Thora Birch in
That's right.
Hocus Pocus with her like witchy outfit and stuff. I'm like, okay, which came first? And I think it was Hocus Pocus.
So that's the other thing. I love Hocus Pocus. more than I love this movie now.
Oh, I can understand that.
And because I think that Hocus Pocus actually like is a horror movie for kids, and I actually think it's a horror. I actually think it's a horror movie that kids can watch. I'm not sure it's a horror movie for kids. Like I think they toned that movie down sufficiently to make it for the right crowd. But it's directed by Mick Garris, right? Like, or is it written by Mick Garris? It's either written. I think it's either written by Mick Garris or directed by Mick Garris. Or no, I think it's directed by Kenny Ortega. Maybe I forget who it is, but Mick Garris is involved directly in it, and that's always one of those things where it's like this is not for kids. Like it's they tone it down enough and they kind of pull back at the right times. And this movie could have used some of that actually. Like this movie could have used a little restraint. You'll be happy to know, though, I'm assuming you saw this while doing your research, Akiva Goldsman returning to write the script for Practical Magic 2.
Yeah.
Isn't that a good thing that you wanted to know and hear?
That's something that I just was hoping against hope that he would be back to weave some more of his magic.
Hocus Pocus was directed by Kenny Ortega with a screenplay by Mick Garris. So story by Mick Garris as well, even. So
it may sound like I'm coming down on this movie, and I kind of am, but I can definitely see why people would like it and why they would forgive its flaws. I don't think any of these flaws are like glaring kind of thing. I think it could have been a little bit better paced. I don't think it could have been better acted because I think that all the performances in here are very solid. I really generally don't like Goran, but that's mostly just because of like the other roles that he played. Wasn't he on ER and he was like such a dreamy doctor and stuff?
I have no idea. I've seen him in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, where he plays like Liv Salander's boss, Liz Salander's boss. That's it.
He is a fucking just gorgeous man. Just fucking
yes.
As beautiful as these women are in here, he is as gorgeous. And Aidan Quinn is nothing to sneeze at either. This is probably one of the best looking casts that you could get in a movie.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like 1999's The Mummy. Like, for the most part, everybody's good looking, unfairly so. I mean, even Mark Firestein, like, good looking guy, would go on to be the lead of his own show for like a decade. What was that? Royal Pains? Is that what it was called? Or whatever the hell. That was like an FX show that was on there with Burn Notice. Speaking of shows that just existed for a decade that people watched. Yeah.
I watched it every episode.
Really?
Yeah. I'm a huge Burn Notice guy.
Yeah, but like that, I mean, you're right. Everybody in this cast is good looking. Everybody in this cast is well cast. It's just you have Akiva Goldsman's name on the screenplay. You're not going to get very far. And I wonder if the upcoming sequel, which is more than likely happening, I wonder if it's going to suffer similarly. Because it's being based on a more recent book of hers on top of everything else, being based on a book that she wrote like 3 years ago.
Interesting. It's almost enough. I mean, I have too many things to read. If I didn't have too many things to read, I would actually be interested in carrying on with these sisters and reading that next book.
Well, so the book that is being adapted is the 4th book in the series for the next movie even. So yeah, there's been 3 books since the first one came out. So yeah, I would be as well. Like you said, like there's other things I want to do and other things I want to read and watch. So this isn't at the top of my list, but the book versions of these characters and the book story, as it were, I think is more compelling for me than this is. And that's just because, again, like I think it's focused on something else. I don't know what this movie's focused on other than giving Sandra Bullock plenty of time to be cute. Like Sandra Bullock is like, I don't know, like her character is so kind of flat in this movie. I just keep coming back to how flat her character is, which is a shame because Sandra Bullock, rarely known for playing flat characters. Like that's not why you hire someone like Sandra Bullock, even in 1998.
Yeah, I agree.
But hey, you know what? I think it's still a movie worth checking out. There's not anything else like it, at least not for a while, until there's another one. But, Griffin Dunn won't direct it, so there'll be that. Stockard Channing and Diane Wiest, maybe they'll come back. I guess they probably will. Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock probably. I mean, just get everybody back, right? God, bring Goran back just for shits and giggles, right? Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Why not? The ghost of Jimmy. The ghost of Jimmy who's hanging out outside and slowly makes his way inside the house, which I just love the whole metaphor of that.
Well, and again, like if the movie was more interested in actually looking at the things that Alice Hoffman was getting at in the book, I think the movie would have reflected it. I just think Akiva Goldsman just takes it all out of the script because there's no subtlety with this man's work. I mean, again, to go back to the I Am Legend of it all, that story is like one of the most poorly adapted things I've ever read. Like, it is such a bad way of adapting that story, and that goes directly to Akiva Goldsman. So everything's based on a book with Akiva Goldsman, even the things so he's right every now and then. There you go. Cool. It's like Damon Lindelof, right? Would you take Damon Lindelof or Akiva Goldsman if you have someone writing a script for you?
That's a real tough nut. Wow.
Right.
I know I've seen Akiva Goldsman's name on far more unproduced things, but then again, his career has been going on for quite a long time. But he wrote Hancock. Fuck. No, or he produced Hancock. I don't know if he wrote it. Damn it. He's been behind some real shitty things. And then he did something really good, like fucking Constantine. I love Constantine.
Well, Damon Lindelof did something I like, Prometheus, which I know no one else is a big fan of. And I would actually take Prometheus over anything Akiva Goldsman has done, period. Cowboys and Aliens ain't great.
No.
Cowboys and Aliens is actually pretty bad. Okay, Cowboys and Aliens is so bad it almost might just completely disregard my quality statement about Prometheus, because, man.
I mean, fuck, like Batman Forever, Batman and Robin.
I know.
Just like some of the most execrable things. I, Robot.
I actually, if we're talking Will Smith movies, between I, Robot and I Am Legend, I will take iRobot all day.
iRobot every day. Yes.
I still own a pair of leather Converse because of iRobot. I like iRobot a fair amount, actually. Isn't Alan Tudyk the voice of the robot in that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
And he also wrote a lot of Fringe, which I like a lot, too.
Yeah, me too.
He has his moments, let's say that.
But then Winter's Tale. But then The Dark Tower.
Yeah.
Let's go back to The Dark Tower. I mean, that's just like... And that's one of those things where it's like, we've been waiting so long. And then you fart that out. But hey, Constantine sequel coming soon, supposedly. Akiva Goldsman involved. Yeah.
Be our boy Keanu coming back? It's got to be, right?
Sure hope so.
We're going to take that guy from the TV show.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
Oh, I know.
If you're going to make a fucking Constantine movie, you better give us Keanu Reeves. Otherwise, don't make the damn thing.
Shia better be back. And we saw him at the very end of that movie with
Tilda.
Big, black angel wings.
Could Tilda come back or no? Is she dead? I don't remember.
No, she's there. Please, John, show me your anger. I've been so bad.
Right.
Yeah,
God,
I
want to rewatch that movie. I haven't seen that movie in a while.
Good.
Jaimin Hansu's in there.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah. What a goodie. And Peter Stormare as the devil. Oh,
yes. Oh, yeah. God, with no eyebrows. He just looks amazing.
Yeah. God. Walking around with this like weird white suit with this like black dripping goo. Yeah. Yeah.
Barefooted. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish we were, I kind of wish we were talking about that right now. What about Dylan Dog? You'd rather talk about Dylan Dog?
Sure. Why not? We did that episode.
We sure did a very long time. Many moons ago is what it feels like. You know, that's the thing. Practical Magic is kind of in that same vein of these other like Halloween or Halloween adjacent movies that they have their fan bases. And I don't blame them. Like, there has not been another movie like this. It is a witchy movie. That is the reason the person who I let program this month picked it, is because they're into witches and black cats and familiars and all that stuff. And this movie is kind of like fucking inject that shit right into my veins. It's like a distillate of that. And so I totally get it. Will I ever watch this movie again? No. But I can objectively sit here and say that I understand why when the Halloween season comes around, or anytime you want to put yourself in a little bit of that mood, this is kind of up there in that class of movies to watch, right? Like, I totally get it.
100%. Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's a good movie. It just means it makes you feel a certain way, which in a lot of ways, that means it's probably not a good movie. That means it's a great movie at doing one specific thing. It doesn't have to be a technically good movie to make you feel strongly a certain way every time you watch it, because there are plenty of great movies out there that don't make me feel a goddamn thing. So, you know, this movie, I understand if you want to put it on to put yourself in the season, but I am done watching Practical Magic, unfortunately. Other than maybe the sequel, which I think I will check out just on the off chance that it actually does happen.
Yeah, I can see myself donating the DVD that I paid $4.44 for.
Well, good cause. Maybe your local Goodwill, somebody will enjoy it, you know?
There you go. Yeah, exactly. And as far as I know, it's not out on Blu-ray, which is very odd. Maybe it is. I just didn't see it, or maybe it doesn't have the special features that the DVD had.
I don't think it's out on Blu-ray.
Really? That's very surprising because, like I said, there's a big fan base for this.
Well, give it time. If a sequel comes out, you'll be getting that Blu-ray, baby. So
yeah. And then you'll get the double pack.
That's right. Maybe even get a new commentary, new features, making practical magic.
Oh boy.
Good Lord. Well, we'll get Funko Pops and everything when the new movie comes out. It'll be a marketing blitzkrieg.
Huh.
Beetlejuice.
Looks like it's out on Blu-ray in Italy, but
Does that technically count? From one Italian to a bunch of others.
Contestami, yes.
Yeah, great.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we should have watched, the Italian dub of Practical Magic.
Oh, there you go.
Bellissima, bellissima.
Comedy double feature, Practical Magic, and Witches of Eastwick. So yeah, I got hung up on that DVD.
So there is a Blu-ray, but it's a double feature Blu-ray?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's a very good Blu-ray, but...
Well, I mean, it has never been up. It has been never given a conversion to Blu-ray that it probably deserves, is a better way of putting it.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, it's not, and that's the thing. It'll probably be given a proper release by somebody if the sequel comes out. I wouldn't be surprised. So Mike, final thoughts on Practical Magic? Yeah,
it was very interesting to go in and kind of figure out more about this movie, why it was the way that it was. Some great talents behind it, some not so great talents behind it, and a lot of greats in front of the camera. If you like this movie, I hope you don't hate us for not liking it as much as you did, but hey, everybody's got different tastes, and I can really see where this might hit with a lot of people. Just didn't hit for me. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I if not for my life taking some turns that I could not have expected, I probably would be watching this movie every year until the day that there's very little left of my ability to comprehend what I'm watching. But that is not the case, folks. So this is probably in a cathartic way the last time I ever need to watch it, and now I have the recording of how I felt about it, so I can always encapsulate that like a sports card, forever kept in a space that has no oxygen. So. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, and like you kind of alluded to, it is a perfectly competent film. I think it is well acted. I think it is well made. I think the people that are involved in the movie clearly enjoyed themselves making it. I can tell that the cast enjoyed working with one another. Everybody seems like their chemistry was palpable and real. But yeah, I mean, I like yourself, I understand why people like this movie. I similarly probably have no need to ever rewatch it. But I can understand, like I said before, when the spooky season comes around, there are worse movies that you could put on than this one. And I think, maybe if you're looking to show your kids something that's maybe a little horror adjacent, maybe to kind of test the waters, you could do worse than something like this. I'm not sure how much kids would be into this movie. You might be fighting an uphill battle, but you could do worse, I think. But they're more kid-leaning things, horror-wise, even better than this, in my opinion. But if you want to see Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman together, you can't do it anywhere else, which is a pretty big plus. So on that note, we'll take a break and we'll play a preview for the next Culturecast.
From Weirding Way Media, Cambridge and Washawn is a podcast about two guys' obsessions, passions, and hobbies. Those two guys are
Mark Bigley, host of Wake Up Heavy, Recollections of Horror,
and Ronald Zarigian, host of the Skelevator YouTube channel.
Each month we talk about the toys, comics, movies, books, TV shows, and other cultural phenomena that captured our imaginations and helped shape who we are today.
From Masters of the Universe to Saturday Night Live, Star Wars to Harry Houdini, The Muppets to The Elephant Man, Ronnie and Mark dive deep into the recesses of their minds to pull out treasured memories of things lost but never forgotten.
Join us on the first Tuesday of each month over at weirdingwaymedia.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Join me, Jamie Benning, on the Filmumentaries podcast, particularly if you enjoy stories like designer Nilo Rodis Jamiro convincing George Lucas to push him around to help gain the support of his crew on the ailing Howard the Duck.
Blam! The door opens, it's George. Everybody gasps. George makes a beeline to me. I'm literally back against the wall.
Or hear puppeteer Tim Rose's emotional story behind that iconic Admiral Akbar shot in Return of the Jedi.
I believe that war is something to be proud of, but not to celebrate.
or how Star Wars editor Paul Hirsch tackled cutting so many successful films.
The thing that I learned from working with De Palma is that tension depends on a clock. You need to have the sense that time is running out.
Maybe Oscar-winning sound designer Mark Mangini's insightful chat about his work on Blade Runner 2049.
Not a single sound from the original Blade Runner in the new film. A great deal of inspiration.
That's the Filmumentaries podcast with me, Jamie Benning.
Hello, Twisted Humans. Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting? Then this is the podcast for you. In 1952, there was a record high of UFOs reported. 1,500 sightings. There has been evidence of human sacrifice, devil worship, and it is haunted by more spirits than can be counted. A family of 2 adults and 2 kids reportedly saw a giant flying thing with glowing red eyes. And meanwhile, the family's nanny that helped Veronica to care for her and Lucian's children was found bludgeoned to death in the basement of their family home. I'm Alicia. And I'm Sierra, and this is Twisted and Uncorked.
Cromwell's family can't be normal.
Why?
Because her grandmother's a witch.
Totally.
And she lives in Halloween Town, where it's Halloween all the time.
Halloween is cool.
Well, battling an evil shadow creature is just not normal.
Oh, big normal is vastly overrated.
Find out more about Marnie Cromwell's family's strange powers.
Powers? What powers?
In the Saturday premiere of Disney's original movie, Halloween Town.
Right on the next Culture Cast, we're going to be talking about yet another semi-family Halloween movie. We're going to be talking about Halloween Town, which is a Disney Channel original movie, also featuring a family of witches and magicians. So very similar to this. I'm going to be joined by our dear friend from Disconnected, Mr. Ryan Barrow. Until then, where can people find you and the things that you work on, Mr. Mike White?
Just about everything that I work on, Chris, is available at weirdandwaymedia.com. That's everything other than Rankin' on Bond, which is a show that is available on your Patreon at patreon.com/culturecast, and my Patreon, which is available at patreon.com/projectionbooth. That's where we talk about James Bond with our dear friend, Mr. Richard Haddam, once a month, every 30-ish days. You know, if we made every month 28 days, we wouldn't have to worry about all this shit. We would just have, it would be perfect. It would work out so well, but we can't do that. It's like making it difficult to type on a typewriter. You know, you got to throw some blockers in there. But yes, go on over, listen to us talk about James Bond every month, day in, month out.
As Mike just said, patreon.com is where you can find the content that you can't find at weirdingwaymedia.com. Culturecast on Patreon, Projection Booth on Patreon, Father Malone on Patreon. We'll throw him in there. You should support any one of us who you get content from financially. If you can't do it financially because times is hard, I get it. You can always head on over to iTunes, like, rate, and review any of the Weirding Way Media shows. That helps all of us out, I promise. And Mike, thank you so much for joining me. This has been great. I mean, a little bit of catharsis never hurt anybody. And, I'm due for it, I guess. But I'm glad that you were motivated to pick this, because otherwise I didn't see anybody else jumping in the line, as it were, to rock their body in time to some practical magic. So, thank you for joining me. This is, I think that if Beetlejuice is the movie that guys can get behind, this might be the female Beetlejuice in a way. Kind of got that vibe to it, right? Like, it's fun, spooky, but it doesn't try to do much. And we're getting a sequel 30 years later. So, jokes on us. So, as always, we'll catch you on the next episode.